Have you ever heard a story so wild, so unbelievable that it just had to be true? Well, sometimes the wildest stories are just that stories. Today, we're diving deep into the shadowy world of deception to uncover history's biggest hoaxes. The elaborate lies that fooled millions and sometimes changed the world. From fake giants to alien invasions, get ready to question everything you think you know. Let's start our journey in 1869 in a small town in New York. A group of workers digging a well hit something hard. It wasn't a rock. It was the petrified body of a 10-foot tall man, a giant. The news spread like wildfire. This was the Cardiff Giant, a relic from a biblical past. People flocked from all over the country to see it, paying 50 cents a pop for a glimpse of the fossilized behemoth. Scientists were baffled. Religious leaders declared it proof of the giants mentioned in the Bible. And the owner, a tobacconist named George Hull, was getting rich. Even the famous showman P.T. Barnum wanted in, offering a fortune for the giant. When Hull refused, Barnum simply created his own fake giant and claimed his was the real one, and Hull's was the fake. The irony is almost too much. So, what was the truth? Well, the Cardiff Giant wasn't a giant at all. It was a block of gypsum, secretly carved and buried by Hull himself. Why? He was an atheist who got into an argument with a preacher about giants in the Bible and decided to prove a point that people will believe anything. The whole thing was a prank, a very, very profitable prank that exposed just how easily we can be fooled. Now, let's fast forward to the 20th century, a time of new technology and new ways to deceive. On the evening of October 30th, 1938, families across America gathered around their radios. Suddenly, a regular music program was interrupted by a startling news bulletin. Astronomers had observed explosions on Mars. Then, more reports came in. A strange meteorite had landed in Grover's Mill, New Jersey. But it wasn't a meteorite. It was a Martian war machine. The broadcast, narrated by a young Orson Welles, described terrifying alien tripods emerging, unleashing heat rays, and wreaking havoc. People panicked. They flooded police stations with calls, packed their bags, and fled their homes, convinced that America was under attack from Mars, but it wasn't an attack. It was a radio play, a Halloween special from Wells's Mercury Theater on the Air, adapting H.G. Wells's classic novel. The War of the Worlds. The show is so realistic, so cleverly formatted as a series of news flashes, that listeners who tuned in late missed the introduction and believed it was real news. The incident became a legendary example of the power of mass media and a cautionary tale about believing everything you hear, even from a trusted source like the radio. From aliens to fairies, let's travel back a bit to 1917 England. Two young cousins, Elsie Wright and Frances Griffiths, took a series of photographs that seemed to show the impossible. They were playing with tiny winged fairies in their garden. In a world weary from the First World War, people were desperate for a bit of magic. The photos captured the public's imagination, and even Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the creator of the logical and rational Sherlock Holmes, was completely convinced. He wrote articles and a book championing the photos as definitive proof of the supernatural. For decades, the Cottingley fairies were a source of wonder and debate. Experts examined the photos, unable to find conclusive evidence of tampering. Were fairies real after all? It wasn't until the early 1980s, over 60 years later, that an elderly Elsie and Frances finally confessed. The fairies weren't supernatural beings. They were cardboard cutouts copied from a children's book, held up with hat pins. The girls had just wanted to play a trick on their parents and were too embarrassed to admit the truth when the story spiraled out of control. It was a simple childhood prank that fooled one of the greatest minds of the time. Now for a hoax that rewrote the very story of human evolution. In 1912, a fossil was unearthed in a gravel pit in Piltdown. It consisted of a human-like skull and an ape-like jaw. Scientists were ecstatic. They named it Piltdown Man and hailed it as the long-sought missing link between apes and humans. It suggested that humans had evolved a large brain first before other features. For over 40 years, Piltdown Man was a star of the scientific world, featured in textbooks and museum exhibits. It was a point of national pride for Britain. But there were always nagging doubts. The pieces just didn't quite fit. Finally, in 1953, with the advent of new dating technology, the truth came out. Piltdown Man was a fraud, a deliberate and malicious fake. The skull was from a medieval human, the jaw was from a modern orangutan, and the teeth were from a chimpanzee. Someone had stained them to look ancient and carefully filed the teeth to make them look more human. To this day, we still don't know for sure who did it. Was it the original discoverer Charles Dawson seeking fame? Or was it a prankster trying to embarrass the scientific establishment? The case of the Piltdown Man remains one of science's greatest whodunits, and a stark reminder that even science can be led astray by the desire to find what it is looking for. Our next hoax takes us into the bizarre world of 18th century royalty. A woman named Mary Toft from Surrey, England, became a national sensation in 1726. Why? She claimed she'd get given birth to rabbits. Yes, you heard that right. Not one, but several rabbits. Local doctors were called in and were completely baffled. They witnessed her giving birth to, well, parts of rabbits. The news reached King George I, who sent his own top surgeons to investigate. For a while, the most brilliant medical minds in England were convinced. Mary Toft became a celebrity, examined and discussed by the Royal Society. How could this possibly happen? The public was fascinated and horrified. The theory was that she had been startled by a rabbit while pregnant, leading to this strange maternal impression. Of course, the reality was far less supernatural. Mary eventually confessed it was all a trick. She had been secretly inserting the rabbit parts herself. Her motive was likely a desperate attempt to gain attention and financial support. The case made the entire medical profession a laughingstock and showed how even the most educated people can be taken in by a truly audacious lie. Let's head back to the United States for a story that combines art, love, and a massive deception. In the 1970s, the art world was buzzing about the lost paintings of a brilliant but reclusive artist named Mark Landis. This kind, quiet man, often dressed as a Jesuit priest, would donate beautiful works of art to museums all across the country. He claimed they were from his family's collection, left to him by his parents. He never asked for money, only that the paintings be hung in their memory. Over 30 years, he donated hundreds of pieces from 5th-10th century icons to works by Picasso. Museum registrars and curators were touched by his generosity and story. The problem was, the paintings weren't originals. They were all forgeries painted by Mark Landis himself. He was a master copyist, able to mimic the styles of countless artists with incredible skill. He'd used cheap materials like plywood and instant coffee to age his creations. He wasn't a criminal mastermind looking for profit. He was a diagnosed schizophrenic who found validation and respect through his philanthropic persona. His deception was only uncovered when a diligent registrar noticed the same painting being donated to 2 different museums. The philanthropic forger never faced charges because he never took any money. But his story is a fascinating look into the psychology of deception and the trusting nature of the art world. Finally, a hoax that takes us to the skies. In 2009, the world watched, captivated, as a silver, saucer-like mylar balloon floated uncontrollably across the Colorado sky. Inside, supposedly, was a 6-year-old boy named Falcon Heen. A frantic 911 call from his parents launched a massive rescue operation. News helicopters tracked the balloon for hours, and the nation held its breath, fearing the worst. The balloon finally landed, but when rescuers got to it, it was empty. Where was the boy? Had he fallen out? The drama intensified until, hours later, Falcon was found hiding in the attic of his family's home. The world breathed a collective sigh of relief. But then, during a live TV interview, the story began to unravel. When asked why he didn't come out when his parents called his name, little Falcon looked at his father and said, "You guys said that we did this for the show." The truth was out. The entire event was a publicity stunt, cooked up by the parents to try and land a reality TV deal. The Balloon Boy hoax was a modern media circus, a story that played out in real time on live television, showing just how far some people will go for their 15 minutes of fame. From petrified giants and Martian invasions to fairy photographs and rabbit births, history is littered with incredible hoaxes. They reveal so much about the times they occurred and our fears, our hopes, and our endless capacity to believe. They remind us to be skeptical, to ask questions, and to never forget that sometimes the most amazing stories are just too good to be true. Which of these hoaxes did you find the most unbelievable? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this journey into deception, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell for more historical deep dives. See you next time.